Hi, Computer Science 2 class. It's Mrs. Miskin. I'm going to go over lesson 18 in code.org today. Lesson 18 is on collisions. And the first screen just shows us what new blocks we're going to be dealing with. Sprite.bounce, bounce off, collide, displace, set collider, and bounciness. Okay, so remember, if you want to review what these blocks do or get some hints or examples, if you click on them, it will open up a new tab that explains all about that particular block. So just keep that in mind if you get stuck. Okay, so screen 1, just an overview. Screen 2 just says, run the program, observe the interactions between the two sprites. Consider some of these things that we've already covered before. Is touching velocity X and Y, and then sprite X and Y. So when I hit run, this giraffe sprite is moving, and then when it touches the monkey sprite, the monkey starts to move also. Okay, screen number 3, program a sprite interaction. The giraffe is already moving across the screen, but the sprite interaction itself hasn't been programmed. Okay, so in our workspace, we would, without using any of the new blocks, because we don't know how to use those yet, we would say something like, if our sprite is touching, so we have a hippo, sorry, not a hippo, a giraffe. And it is touching the monkey. So if the giraffe is touching the monkey, let's look at what settings it has. The giraffe has velocity X of 1. The monkey does not have any velocity. So if we want the monkey to start moving, we need to give the monkey velocity X inside of the if. So we would drag this over and give that the same setting as the giraffe, which was 1. So we would put 1 in here. And let's see if it does what we saw in the previous example. So the giraffe is moving when it touches the monkey. Now they both start moving at the same rate. Okay, number 4. All right, so we've written code for a sprite interaction. In this example, the elephant should push the hippo off the screen. So let's run it. We see the elephant coming up from below, and it's going just underneath the hippo. Okay, so there hasn't been any kind of interaction coded in here. So like we did on the previous example, let's go ahead and add our if statement. So if our elephant is touching, we have a hippo, and we want that hippo's velocity Y to be the same as the elephant. Now before we programmed it at 1, but in this example, the elephant's velocity is a random number that's changing. Now I could program a random number into this spot right here in the hippo's velocity, but what if they don't match up? Then one of them might move at a different rate, and that doesn't work. So what I'm actually going to do here is program it to be the same as the elephant's velocity. Then whatever it is set at, they'll match. So when I run, the elephant comes up and pushes the hippo off the screen. I'm going to do that a couple of times so that you saw in the previous one it was a little slower. Now it's a little slower again. Or faster. This one is much, much slower. So let's see if the hippo matches. Okay, very good. Screen number 5, displace. So now we have a block that's called displace that handles that interaction that we were programming with the is touching and then moving. So we're going to use the sprite.displace block, and let's see where it's at in our code. Should be in our draw loop right here, hippo.displace elephant. Okay, so the sprite.displace block is being used, then the elephant needs to push the hippo. So let's see what it's actually doing. They're coming together, and now the hippo is pushing the elephant, but we want it to be the other way around. So in this example on line 18, that says hippo displace elephant, which means the hippo will push the elephant out of place. If we want to reverse that, we just change the position of the sprite names. So the hippo will displace, the elephant will displace the hippo. So now when they come together, the elephant will push the hippo up off the screen. Okay, screen number 6, more collision blocks. Sprite.collide, sprite.bounce, sprite.bounce off. Okay, so they're gonna act just a little bit differently depending on which one we use. So this says switch out the displace for those new blocks. So let's find the displace in our draw loop. It's on line 12. So the parrot is displacing the penguin. We saw in the previous example that the elephant and the hippo were the two sprites, and the elephant was displacing the hippo, so pushing it. So we should see the parrot sprite displace or push out of the way the penguin. So the parrot's going to be this red sprite, and the penguin will be the grayish one. Okay, so that behaved just the way that we thought it would. Let's try sprite.collide. And let's see what that does. So I'm going to say parrot collide with the penguin. Okay, so collide means that the penguin will actually push the parrot out of the way. Let's try bounce. Okay, so bounce, they both bounce away from each other. Let's try bounce off. Okay, in that example, the bounce off means that whichever is the first one will bounce off and its velocity will reverse, but the other one will stay the same. So this target one, the second opening in our bounce off. Okay, screen number 7. There are 4 types. We've had an example of those: displace, collide, bounce, and bounce off. Okay, choose the best block to model the basketball bouncing off of the floor. Okay, so you can kind of imagine in your mind what the basketball bouncing off just in real life, what that would look like. So let's try, we can try bounce, and let's see if that one works. Basketball, bounce, and this is called wood. Okay, that's not quite how it's going to react or how it would have reacted in real life. So let's kind of gather a clue from our instructions: the basketball bouncing off of the floor. So the floor needs to stay in the same position. So let's try bounce off instead. Okay, that looks better. That looks like a basketball would on a floor. Okay, screen number 8, debugging sprite interactions. The turtle can be moved with the arrow keys. It's not supposed to be able to walk through the tree. Something is wrong with the code. Okay, so run the code, try to make the turtle collide with the tree. So we have a block down here on line 7, turtle collide tree. So let's find out if that's actually working. I hit the arrow key down. Nope, the turtle is going behind the tree. So that's not what we want it to do. Okay, if we want something to be in effect after we've hit run, it actually needs to be down in the draw loop. So if I move that into the draw loop, reset and run, now when I hit down, the turtle stops. And I can go forward and I can go down a little bit, but not much, okay? So that means that there's kind of an invisible barrier around that tree that's preventing the turtle from going behind it. Okay, so that's exactly what we need it to do. Screen number 9. Sometimes sprites behave in ways that are unexpected. There is a block, sprite.debug, that will better help us understand how they are interacting. So these two coins are round, so we would expect them to bounce in a certain way. Something weird is happening. So let's run it and see what's happening. So we have two coins and we think that they should bounce off of each other perhaps, but they're going kind of slanted and diagonal from each other. So that's not what we want them to do. Okay, use the sprite.debug block to make debug true. So we have a block down here. For the gold coin, we're going to make that true. It was set at false. So to reverse it, we just did the opposite. Now let's see what that does. Oh, see, we have squares around our circular coins. So that means that that's how the interactions are being recognized with a rectangle around it. So that's probably not quite what we want to do. Okay, change the gold coin's starting X position to 51, run the code again. Okay, let's see if that fixes it. So gold coin, the X position, let's change that to 51, and we'll see if anything different happens. Okay, so it's still not bouncing the way that we would expect. Okay, so you can think about why that is on your own. Let's go on to screen number 10. Sprites interact based on the size and shape of their collider, not the images that are assigned to them. Okay, so when we add a sprite, we know if we don't set an animation that it is a big block, okay? So we understand that this collider, or I guess outline, you could maybe consider that is a rectangle. We can also choose though, which is telling us in here that we can choose a rectangle or a circle. So if we have a sprite that is more round, we would probably want to use that so that the interactions between it and other sprites are a little more realistic. Okay, by default, all colliders are rectangle. So we want to find the sprite.setCollider block for the gold coin, change it to circle. So let's do that first. Gold coin, set collider, we're going to change that to circle. Now let's run it again. Okay, so you can see that there is a circle around the gold coin. There's still a rectangle around the other coin though, the silver coin. So instruction number 2 says add a new sprite.setCollider block for the silver coin and change that one to circle also. So here's our silver coin. Let's find that set collider. And we're going to call it silver coin and set it to circle. Now when we run it, they're both circles and they should behave the way that we expect. If they're circles, they should bounce off of each other like that. Okay. Screen number 11, bouncing nest. Bounce off has made sprites bounce away from other objects as fast as they bounced into them. So that's going to keep bouncing at the same exact rate. In the real world, almost everything slows down just a little bit when it bounces off something else. That's called gravity. You can use the bounciness block to tell your sprite how much to slow down or speed up. So that would be a little more realistic simulation Let's go ahead and run and see what's happening right now. So we have a basketball, a soccer ball, and a pool ball. Okay, so the pool ball and the basketball are slowing down until they come to a stop. The soccer ball continues to bounce up and down to the exact same point. Okay, so we want to add a bounciness block to our soccer ball. And what settings should we give it? If we look in our code here, the pool ball is set at 0.4. The basketball is set at 0.8. Now, realistically, a soccer ball should be somewhere in between. So if I set this at 0.6, we should see that. Okay, so the soccer ball would bounce a little bit more than the pool ball, but not as much as the basketball. Okay. Number 12, here's our flyer game from previous lessons. Okay, so we're gonna add an obstacle sprite to the game, add a new sprite called obstacle. And we're gonna program some interactions between it. So we've got our character, we've got our coin, and our score variable. So now we're going to add in an obstacle. And in this example, a sun image was chosen. So we can see if that is in our animation tab. Okay, you can choose a different one if you would like to though. All right, run the code, make sure the sprite appears where you want it to on the screen. Okay, so it appears right straight in the middle. I'm not sure that I really want that to appear right there. So I'm just going to change to maybe up here in the corner. So I'm going to adjust my X and Y and just see if that is in a better position. Okay. Okay, we don't want the player to be able to move through the obstacle, so we need one of the sprite interaction blocks. Right? Do we want to set it at bounce or bounce off, collide, or displace? So you can decide. I'm going to go ahead and use the collide block. Because I don't want the sun to move in the sky. That wouldn't be really very realistic. So my character, or my sprite is called character. And I'm going to say obstacle. So when I run, my flyer here cannot get beyond the sun. But look here in this corner, there seems to be kind of an invisible edge. What do we know about that? We know that there are rectangles or circles. So I'm going to go ahead and change the collider to a circle so that my flyer can get just a little bit closer up into it. See how it gets more close to the edge in the corners? That's kind of what I want. Okay. And you can use any type of collider. It doesn't have to be a sun. And then adjust bounciness or any other settings if you need to. Okay, the coin behind the obstacle. The coin is moving to random locations. Sometimes it will even appear behind your obstacle. So the character can't get to it. That's not something that we want. Use sprite interactions to fix the problem. Okay, so we want the coin to not move behind the obstacle because it's going to appear in a random place. So let's just look at that and see. When my flyer touches it. Okay, seeing that right there, it's partially behind the sun now. And this one I can probably still get to it. But what if it goes all the way behind the sun? Not going to be able to catch the coin, so my score won't increase. So we want to program in some code that will prevent the coin from moving behind the obstacle. So let's look down here. We have if character is touching the coin, it resets its position. I think we want to program if the coin is behind the obstacle. So I think in this case, probably want to use the collide, because the collide prevents it from going inside of that same space. So if coin collides with the obstacle, we want to reset its position. Now I can just use these blocks right here because that resets the position too. If you want to change it a little bit, that's fine too. And maybe it will let me. Let's do show text and we'll do it that way. Okay, so let's give that a try. So now the coin is over on the other side, but not behind it. My flyer is too far over. Oh, there you got it. Okay. Usually eventually come back on the screen if you give them a second. Okay. Right, you can give that a couple of tries just to be sure that it is working correctly. And then you can go ahead and finish. Okay, screen number 15, change colliders. All your colliders are rectangular. Switch them over to circles to get more realistic bounces and collisions. Okay, so we did set the coin collider to a circle and the obstacle set collider. It looks like I've maybe already done this step right here. So I would, let's see, for the character and the coin, we already did for the obstacle when we set that one up. But in your sprites, you're going to find the set collider and move it up here. Remember, if you change any properties of a sprite, it needs to be underneath where you declare it. So this is where you declare it or initialize it, this purple block. Any of these other settings need to be underneath it. So it wouldn't work if I had it up above. So character, we're going to change that one to a circle. And we want the coin to also be set at a circle. If you're not sure if it is actually working that way, you can use the sprite.debug and change that one to your sprite's name and then see if that's working. Okay, let's see if there's any other instructions. Okay, set your sprite's debug properties to true if it's not working. If it seems to be working the way that you want it to, you can go ahead and go on to the next one. Okay, so my flyer gets right up there close to the sun. It gets right close to the coin also. I'm happy with that one. Okay, screen number 16, make it your own. Here are some things that you can do to customize this flyer game. I'm not going to go through all of them. This is something that you can do on your own, and then I will just check it. So here's some ideas. Create invisible sprites at the edge of your game to keep your character from bouncing out. Add platforms to your game or other obstacles. Or you can do something with the background or changing the animations, just something so that it's a little bit different. But I'm going to give you a lot of leeway on that one to just do something on your own. And then if you just look really briefly at screen 17, it's a review of each of those new blocks and an example over here on the right of what that looks like. Okay, and that is lesson 18.